Yes, my friends, things are starting to heat up behind the scenes in Baltimore, and we need to talk about something that could become a major concern for the Ravens. We all know how important Mark Andrews has been to this offense, and especially to Lamar Jackson over the years. But man, what we're hearing from training camp is getting harder to ignore. The drops are showing up, the mistakes are becoming part of the conversation, and after the difficult season Andrews had last year, Ravens fans have every right to wonder what comes next. I really want to see the Ravens in the Super Bowl, and why not this year? But if Baltimore wants to get there, they need their biggest defensive weapons ready to deliver. Some fans believe Mark Andrews will bounce back and prove that he can still be that reliable target for Lamar. Others are starting to wonder if what we saw last season was the beginning of a real decline. I want to know which side you're on. Do you still believe Mark Andrews will return to his best form, or are you seriously concerned about what is happening with him? Write your opinion in the comments. And if you've been a Baltimore Ravens fan for more than 15 years, hit that like button hard. Now, let's talk about Mark Andrews. Now, let's get straight into this, because what has been happening with Mark Andrews is probably one of the biggest stories coming out of Ravens training camp right now. And I want to make one thing clear from the beginning. This is not about saying Andrews is finished. It is not about forgetting what he has meant to this offense. It is about looking at what has actually happened at camp and understanding why Baltimore needs this situation to improve quickly. According to observations from Sunday's practice, Andrews has not had a strong camp, and Sunday may have been his worst practice so far. Cordell Woodland pointed out something that should immediately catch the attention of every Ravens fan. Normally, by this point in camp, there have already been those practices where Andrews takes over. Lamar Jackson keeps looking in his direction. Andrews catches pass after pass, and suddenly everybody is talking about the connection between number 8 and his tight end again. That apparently has not happened this time. Instead, drops have become part of the conversation. One example came when Lamar went to Andrews on an out route. Jalen Hawkins made contact with Andrews from behind as he was trying to secure the football, and Andrews could not complete the catch. There was another out route where Andrews bobbled the football until it eventually hit the ground. One drop pass in August. Nobody should panic. 2. Still not enough to make some huge conclusion. But when you put those plays together with the rest of his camp, that is where the concern starts growing. Earlier in camp, Andrews made several catches during a practice, but also dropped what was described as a routine ball during a 7-on-7 period. During a rain-soaked practice, he also lost a fumble. The pattern is what matters here, and the timing could not be more important for Baltimore. The Ravens no longer have Isaiah Likely or Charlie Kolar sitting behind Andrews. That completely changes the conversation. Baltimore has young tight ends with potential, and there have been positive moments from the rookies during camp. Josh Quavies has had his name come up repeatedly, and Matt Hibner has had his moments as well. Those young players can develop into useful pieces, but there is a huge difference between being excited about rookies and needing rookies to immediately replace the production of an established veteran. That is why Baltimore needs Andrews. Veteran Durham Smythe can provide another role, particularly as a blocker, but the expectation is not that he simply becomes another Mark Andrews. The Ravens entered this situation knowing that Likely was gone, Kolar was gone, and Andrews was going to remain the central veteran in that tight end room. That placed a lot of responsibility on him. And there is another layer to this story that makes the current camp even harder to ignore. Andrews is coming off a very difficult 2025 season. He finished that season with only 422 receiving yards and averaged a career-low 8.8 yards per reception. Outside of his rookie season and the year when he appeared in only 10 games, there really was not much comparison to how limited his production became. He played a full schedule and still had what was described as the worst season of his career. That does not automatically mean the decline will continue, but it does mean that these training camp problems are not happening after a dominant season. If Andrews had just produced one of the best years of his career and then dropped a few passes in August, this would probably feel very different. Instead, the Ravens are hoping for a bounce-back year, and the first part of camp has not provided the kind of reassurance everybody wanted. There is still something very important working in Andrews' favor: his relationship with Lamar Jackson. Even when Andrews is not producing huge numbers, defenses know what that connection can do. They cannot simply pretend he does not exist. His history with Lamar forces opponents to account for him, and that has value by itself. If Andrews can rediscover his normal level of play, that relationship could once again become a major part of Baltimore's offense. But the opportunities have to become catches. The drops cannot continue. The fumbles cannot become a problem. Andrews is entering his 9th NFL season, and he will turn 31 next month. He is the veteran in this room. The Ravens need stability from him, especially because so much of the depth behind him is young and still developing. There is also the memory of the Buffalo playoff game hanging over this discussion. The drop and the fumble in that divisional round game were painful moments, and the concern now is whether that game was simply one terrible night or whether it was the beginning of a much more difficult stretch for Andrews. Nobody can answer that in August, and nobody should pretend they can. The important point is that Andrews still has time. The Ravens were less than 2 weeks into training camp when these concerns were being discussed. Writing him off now would be ridiculous considering everything we have seen him do throughout his career. But ignoring the warning signs would be just as ridiculous. If you asked me where the concern should be right now, I would say somewhere around 6.5 out of 10 feels fair. Not panic. Not 1 out of 10 either. There is enough evidence here to pay close attention to what happens next. Because if Andrews gets back to even 80% of the player Ravens fans know, the entire picture changes. Suddenly the rookies can develop at a natural pace instead of being asked to carry the position. Suddenly the wide receivers do not have extra pressure placed on them. And suddenly Lamar has one of his most familiar targets, creating problems in the middle of the field again. That could also help Zay Flowers as he continues to grow, while players such as Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker, and rookie Jacoby Lane try to make their own impact. And Lane, by the way, has been one of the most exciting stories at camp. Sunday brought another impressive performance from the rookie wide receiver. Lane made a difficult two-handed catch over the middle while working back toward the football against tight coverage from Marlon Humphrey. Shortly afterward, he made a sprawling catch toward the left sideline for another first down. Later in practice, he drew pass interference against Humphrey while running vertically down the left sideline. That is the type of camp you want from a young receiver. Lane keeps creating highlights. He is making difficult catches, winning opportunities, and forcing people to notice him. Nobody needs to put unrealistic expectations on him before he has even played meaningful NFL football, but the reports from camp have been extremely encouraging. And Lane was not the only player giving Ravens fans something positive to talk about Sunday. Rookie running back Adam Randall produced one of the memorable plays of practice during a live tackling period involving mostly younger players. Aaron Graves met Randall in the backfield on a run toward the left side, but Randall bounced away from the tackle, reversed direction, and rumbled up the right sideline for a big gain. That is exactly what you want to see during these practices. A young player turning what looks like a dead play into something explosive. Keandre Jackson intercepted Tyler Huntley. Zion Young blew up a running play. Chandler Rivers also had a solid practice, making a tackle for loss on a toss to Randall and nearly producing a leaping pass breakup